The United States government dropped a bombshell on the tech world this week, sending shockwaves through the industry. New export restrictions were announced, targeting advanced AI chips destined for China, a move that many saw coming but hoped would never materialize. These aren't just any chips. These are the brains behind everything from self-driving cars to cutting-edge artificial intelligence, the very heart of modern innovation. The message was clear. America wants to keep China's technological ambitions in check. The impact was immediate and far-reaching. Shockwaves reverberated through Silicon Valley, the epicenter of global tech innovation. Companies like Nvidia, the darling of the AI revolution, saw their stock prices plummet, erasing billions in market value overnight. Intel, the granddaddy of the chip industry, wasn't spared either, facing a similar fate as investors reacted to the news. The restrictions sent a chill down the spines of tech executives, forcing them to confront a new reality where geopolitical tensions could disrupt their business models. This wasn't just about lost sales or market share, it was about something much bigger, a strategic move in a larger geopolitical chess game. The restrictions represented a significant escalation in the ongoing tech war between the United States and China, a conflict that had been brewing for years. A war that had been simmering for years, threatening to boil over at any moment with each side unwilling to back down. And now, it seemed, that moment had arrived, with the world watching anxiously. The world was watching, holding its breath, wondering what would happen next. Would China retaliate with its own set of restrictions? Would this be the start of a full-blown trade war, with consequences that could ripple through the global economy? Or could cooler heads prevail, finding a way to de-escalate the situation? Only time would tell. The financial markets wasted no time delivering their verdict on the new export restrictions. The impact was immediate and severe, sending shockwaves through the entire industry. Within 48 hours, a staggering $106 billion was wiped off the combined market value of U.S. chipmakers. It was a bloodbath, a financial massacre that left investors reeling. Nvidia, the company that had ridden the AI wave to unprecedented heights, was hit particularly hard. The tech giant, once a darling of Wall Street, found itself in a precarious position. Its shares tumbled by 8.4%, a clear sign that investors were worried about the company's future prospects. The uncertainty surrounding Nvidia's ability to navigate these restrictions was palpable. Intel, despite its more diversified business, also felt the heat, with its stock price falling by 6.8%. The ripple effects of the restrictions were far-reaching. These numbers told a story of market volatility and investor anxiety, a story of uncertainty and fear. The restrictions had injected a huge dose of both into the market, creating an atmosphere of tension and unpredictability. The restrictions had injected a huge dose of both into the market. Investors were left scrambling, trying to make sense of the new landscape. No one knew for sure how this would play out. But one thing was certain, the stakes were incredibly high. The future of the tech industry hung in the balance. For years, U.S. chipmakers had benefited from selling their products to the world's second-largest economy. The symbiotic relationship had fueled growth and innovation. China, with its insatiable appetite for technology, had become a vital market. The demand for cutting-edge chips and components was ever-growing, but now that market was in jeopardy. The restrictions threatened to sever a crucial lifeline for U.S. chipmakers, leaving the future uncertain. China wasn't about to take the U.S. restrictions lying down. Beijing responded with a calculated move of its own, revising its semiconductor rule. This wasn't just about tariffs or trade barriers, it was about playing the long game. The new rule focused on a critical detail, the location of wafer fabrication. Chips made in Taiwan, a self-governing island that China claims as its own, would be exempt from the 125% tariff slapped on U.S. products. It was a strategic masterstroke. This seemingly minor tweak had major implications. Companies like AMD, Nvidia, and Qualcomm, which outsourced their chip fabrication to Taiwan, breathed a sigh of relief. They had been thrown a lifeline. However, for US-based manufacturers like Intel, GlobalFoundries, and Texas Instruments, the new rule was a blow. It meant their chips would be at a significant disadvantage in the Chinese market. The message was clear. China was willing to play hardball to protect its interests. The new export restrictions had a direct impact on two of the biggest names in the chip industry, Intel and Nvidia. These restrictions were part of a broader strategy to curb China's technological advancements and maintain a competitive edge in the global tech race. For Intel, it meant needing an export license to sell its Gaudi chips to China. This was a significant hurdle, as the process of obtaining such licenses is often lengthy and uncertain. These chips, designed for AI workloads, were a key part of Intel's growth strategy in the data center market. The Gaudi chips were expected to drive innovation and performance improvements in AI applications. One of Intel's biggest customers for Gaudi chips was ByteDance, the Chinese tech giant behind TikTok. ByteDance relied heavily on these chips to power its vast array of AI-driven services and applications. The restrictions threatened to disrupt this lucrative relationship, potentially costing Intel billions of dollars in lost revenue. The financial implications were enormous, and Intel's stock prices reflected the market's anxiety. Nvidia, on the other hand, faced an even bigger problem. The company was renowned for its cutting-edge AI accelerators, which were in high demand globally. The company was barred from selling its H20 AI accelerators to China, effectively cutting it off from a market that had accounted for a significant portion of its revenue. This was a devastating blow to Nvidia's business strategy. Chinese tech giants had pre-ordered over $12 billion worth of H20 chips, orders that were now in jeopardy. The sudden halt in sales created a ripple effect across the tech industry. The restrictions on Nvidia and Intel highlighted the high stakes involved in the US-China tech war. This conflict was not just about business but also about national security and technological dominance. Both companies were caught in the crossfire, forced to navigate a complex geopolitical landscape. The future of the semiconductor industry seemed more uncertain than ever, with global ramifications. Section 5 AMD caught in the crossfire. While Intel and Nvidia felt the immediate brunt of the US export restrictions, AMD wasn't entirely unscathed. The company, known for its CPUs and GPUs, also faced export control restrictions that threatened to impact its China market. Although AMD's reliance on Chinese manufacturing gave it some insulation from the immediate impact of the wafer fabrication rule, the broader restrictions on selling advanced chips still posed a challenge. The company's ability to sell its latest and greatest products in China was now in question. AMD's situation underscored the interconnected nature of the global semiconductor industry. Even companies that had taken steps to diversify their supply chains were not immune to the escalating tensions between the US and China. Section 6. A shifting landscape. The US export restrictions and China's retaliatory semiconductor rules sent shockwaves through the global semiconductor market. The long-term implications of these moves were profound, with the potential to reshape the industry for years to come. For US chipmakers, the restrictions represented a double-edged sword. On the one hand, they were intended to protect national security and maintain US technological dominance. On the other hand, they risked ceding ground to competitors in a crucial market. China, for its part, saw an opportunity. The restrictions fueled the country's determination to become self-sufficient in semiconductor manufacturing. Chinese companies, backed by government support, were already making strides in developing their own advanced chips. The stage was set for a new era of competition in the semiconductor industry, an era where the battle lines were drawn between the world's two superpowers. Section 7. A new world order for chips. Experts predict that the recent events will accelerate a trend that was already underway: the rise of China as a semiconductor powerhouse. By 2030, some analysts believe Chinese companies will dominate their domestic chip market. The US restrictions, while intended to slow down China's progress, could have the unintended consequence of forcing the country to innovate faster. Cut off from access to US chips, Chinese companies will be incentivized to develop their own alternatives. This shift towards a more multipolar semiconductor industry has significant implications for the global economy. The days of US dominance in chipmaking may be numbered. A new world order for chips is emerging, one where China plays a leading role. Section 8. The voices of industry ignored. The semiconductor industry didn't sit idly by as the US government prepared to impose its export restrictions. Companies like Intel and Nvidia, recognizing the potential damage to their businesses, engaged in intense lobbying efforts to try and change the administration's course. Nvidia's CEO, Jensen Huang, even met with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago to plead his case. Huang argued that the restrictions would harm US companies more than they would harm China. He warned that Chinese companies would simply develop their own chips, leaving US companies out in the cold. Despite these efforts, the industry's pleas fell on deaf ears. The Trump administration, driven by national security concerns and a desire to appear tough on China, went ahead with the restrictions. The failure of the industry's lobbying efforts highlighted the complex interplay between business interests and national security in the context of the US-China tech war. Section 9. The chips fall. The US export restrictions on advanced AI chips to China marked a turning point in the technological rivalry between the two superpowers. The move triggered a chain reaction, impacting stock prices, trade relations, and the future of the global semiconductor industry. The full implications of these events will take years to unfold. One thing is certain, the chips have fallen, and the landscape of the tech world has been forever altered. The US and China are now locked in a high-stakes battle for technological supremacy, with the semiconductor industry at the epicenter of the conflict. The outcome of this battle will have profound consequences for the global economy and the balance of power in the 21st century.